Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to Business Innovators Radio. This is your host, Constant Taylor. Today, we have a very special guest on the show, and they're going to share some very exciting information with us. So, if you're looking to increase your personal and professional effectiveness, then you've come to the right place. Our special guest today is Rebecca Staton Reinstein. Rebecca has been speaking professionally for over 20 years, and the content that she primarily speaks on is strategic leadership. And she also speaks on a subject that happened over 100 years ago called the dirtiest election ever. She has spoken both nationally and internationally and is based out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida area. Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Constantine. I'm delighted to be here.
And we're glad to have you. Now, I'd like to kick off the show by asking you if you could tell the listeners a little bit about your business and how you help your clients.
Sure. My company's called Advantage Leadership, and we work primarily with companies or even nonprofits that are at a transition point, and they're at that point when they need to do something very different to become more profitable, to get their employees more engaged, to get better results, happier clients. And we do this through strategic planning primarily, and also with team building with not only the executive team, but all the teams throughout the organization.
Okay.
And the end result is on the bottom line.
Okay, excellent. Now, could you describe your perfect customer or the perfect prospect who would be an ideal candidate for your services?
Sure. Let me give you an example. A bank came to me some years ago, and they were an entrepreneurial startup, but they had now grown to about 100 employees. They knew that they needed to have more structure. They knew they needed to make some changes, but they didn't want to give up that energy, those personal relationships that you have in those kinds of organizations. And the last thing on earth they wanted to do was become bureaucratic and bogged down. So we worked with them for a couple of years, first starting off with a strategic plan, not only to look at the specific business results they wanted to get, but a plan to transform the organization in terms of its structure and so forth. And then we worked with the leadership and the management. We did some team building. We helped deploy that plan throughout the organization so that every individual had an individual plan, and he or she knew exactly where they fit in to helping the company grow and move forward. And the end result was that they had very, very improved bottom line results, and that was even during an economic downturn. And of course, employee engagement went up, and they had much, much happier customers.
Okay, very, very impressive. Now, can you describe to me 2 or 3 typical problems, either real or perceived, that your customers have and how you work with them to solve those?
Sure. The main thing that they often run into is the fact that they're not growing. A lot of times we see them at that kind of plateau where they were growing fine for a while, but they just can't now seem to kind of move it up a little bit, move to that next level. Perhaps the economic environment or the competitive environment has shifted, but whatever is going on, they haven't quite kept up with it. That's very typical. They're at a transition point. They're at a point when they know they need to change, but they don't know exactly what they need to do to change.
Hmm.
And so that's when we often come in and work with them. Sometimes it's with a large department or the whole organization. And we often will do, especially in a department, we'll do some team building, but a very special kind of team building focused on getting them fully engaged in really working as a team and supporting one another, cooperating, collaborating, instead of kind of building their little silos, which is kind of the way in which many companies drift into the problems they have.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Now, what would you say is your, what I call your secret sauce, or that thing that you do so well, the thing that you bring to the table to help your clients?
Well, I think a couple of things. First of all, I have a long career, both in the public and private and even the nonprofit sector. I was a manager and a leader. I have a PhD in organizational development, so that's given me some context and some background.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I've been in my own business for 20 years now, and we have a track record of showing how to move from point A to point B, be profitable, engage employees, and really have your customers quite happy. And the other thing is that sometimes we're working with large companies. I need to assemble a team for them. And what I bring in are a team of what we call principals. These are people who all run their own businesses. They all have a track record and a reputation in their particular industry, so that when we work with a company, we're able to really bring some of the best minds out there to bear on their issues to help them and coach them through their transitions and the changes that they're making. And I guess as a final piece of that is I became absolutely fascinated with the leaders of the late 18th century, early 19th century in the U.S., and I've written some books about it, and looking specifically at the framers of the U.S. Constitution. So I'll bring their wisdom and the wisdom of some of our earliest leaders into the mix. And most of what they had to say and do were really quite relevant for today. And I find that people really appreciate that. I found that most CEOs know a lot about history and are quite interested in learning from some remarkable strategic leaders.
Excellent insight. Now, what are one or two popular misconceptions about the services that you provide or the results that you produce?
I think the first myth is, and you hear this around a lot, that strategic planning and implementation don't really work in our dynamic, changing economy. And that's simply not the reality. In fact, think about it this way. Without a plan, you're at the mercy of all these external forces around us. The bank I mentioned earlier was in one of these situations where they'd been making progress, they had a really strong plan, and the economy kind of went into one of its periodic little tailspins. And I was sitting in the conference room, we were waiting for the monthly meeting to start, and when the CEO walked in, everybody was kind of glum. In fact, they were worried if they were even going to have a job after the meeting. And things were so bad. And instead, he comes in, he has this kind of dapper air about him, and he says, "Folks, we're going to be okay." And of course, there was this universal sigh of relief, because he said, all we have to do is tweak our plan a little bit. We're going to do a little more of this, a little less of that. We're going to just shift a couple of things around, and we can now respond to this situation instead of going into reactionary mode, because then you're at the mercy of those external forces. When you've got a plan, you can modify it. When you don't, you have no choice. And I think the other big myth that I run into a lot is that doing team development and culture change are kind of fluffy. they're not really going to affect the bottom line. And the reality is that today, everybody's being asked to do more with less. That's just the mantra in every organization I go into.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want folks to do more with less, then you have to make sure they've got new skills. So the development of the team and the individuals is to develop some new skills, to take their existing talents and deploy them in such a way that they're going to be used more effectively, and help them be prepared for the fact that it's always going to be changing, that it's always going to be different. And in fact, there's a lot of research on this, very good research, that shows that when you do these things, when you put this emphasis on really helping your folks become much more effective and efficient, then those bottom line results follow. And you lower turnover, and you end up with much more engagement, which of course leads to real profitability.
Now, and I agree with you 100%. And then the thing that I would add, and see what you think about this, is in addition to, when you're asking them to work, to work more, is also providing them with the tools, the necessary tools to be able to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And whatever those tools are, they need them. You've got to have them. You cannot ask somebody to go out and build a wall and not give them any bricks. Say, well, go ahead and do the best you can. And I see that happen too often. So, yes, they need the right kind of tools, whether they're software tools or physical tools or mental tools.
Excellent. What do you think is the main reason that a person or organization that you can help the most decides not to buy from you? Is it price, time, commitment, what others think, etc.?
It really is the time commitment of the leadership. You can't delegate this to anyone else. And when people realize that they're going to have to spend an awful lot of their time and energy on helping that organization change and make the transition, you run into what Dr. Deming, the great guru of quality, used to say: people are always looking for instant pudding.
I like
and but it really describes it, because just to get things, the momentum going, can take somewhere between 12 to 18 months. And that gets it going. After that, the leadership of the organization still has to work hard so it becomes really built into the DNA of the organization, and it's sustainable through various crises. And this is not easy, especially since we have a lot of churn at the top of especially large organizations. And they're going to have to work. They're going to have to work with their own teams. You're going to have to be ready to cascade this down. And I know from working with, mentoring, coaching these leaders, that you're going to encounter roadblocks. There are going to be some things that just are going to stand right in your way. And it's when you hit that first big one, and you know it's going to work because the leader says, we are going to go ahead with this. I don't care that X has happened. But if the minute you run into some difficulty, they say, oh, well, we have to put this on hold now because we have to deal with situation X. Then you know they haven't quite gotten it yet. And the likelihood that they'll pick it up again or that things will work goes way, way down. So it takes that sustained leadership. I read something recently that said that showed through some research that had been done that the most important thing and influence that a CEO or other leader of an organization has is through the constant reinforcement of a mission. In other words, keeping people focused and on target. And good ones just keep talking the same thing, repeating it over and over again until it really sinks in, and rewarding the people who follow this and get the results, not those that continue doing the old way of doing things.
Now, with the last 30 seconds that we have, can you leave the listeners with one main theme, concept, or thought, whereas if they don't get anything else out of this interview, this is what I want to convey to you?
Yes. One of the most important parts of strategic leadership is not only having that strategic plan, but it's getting people on a mission. Having everyone in the organization focused on heading in that same direction and having that clear expression of what we're trying to be and do, so that you can look at any decision you're ready to make or action you're ready to take and say, is this going to move me closer to or further from accomplishing the mission? If I'm going in the right direction, then let's go, great guns. And if I'm not, I shouldn't be doing it. The mission is the critical element.
Excellent. Now, if the listeners would like to get in contact with your organization, learn more about the services that you provide, how can they do that?
Well, the easiest way is you can go to my website, www.advantageleadership.com. That's advantageleadership.com. Or check me out on LinkedIn. It's Rebecca Staton Feinstein.
Okay, excellent. Well,
and of course, they
ahead.
can always call. Yeah, the number is 305-606-9312. 305-606-9312.
Okay, and if there's any upcoming or current books that you'd like to mention, feel free to do that.
Well, I think that they might enjoy, if they're at the point where they need a guide for their strategic planning. I have a book called Success Planning, a how-to guide for strategic planning. And if they really want to look at strategic leadership, the book is called Conventional Wisdom, How Today's Leaders Plan, Perform, and Progress Like the Founding Fathers. And, of course, they're both available on my website and at Amazon.
Excellent. Well, Rebecca, this has been a true treat and a pleasure for myself and the listeners. We appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. And excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. I enjoyed it, and I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.